to the second hour where I said we would delve more into some of these cults and these topics and the New Age. And for people who, again, are new to this, I had a guy asking why I have a problem between now and when I did that stream. People asking, why do you not like Blavatsky? Who, you must be brand new to anything we talk about, which is fine. I'm not trying to be mean here, but like, why? I can't fathom anybody thinking that I would like Blavatsky. Blavatsky was a con woman, and she was also a crackpot, and she was also a stooge of globalists, and she was also, I believe, probably sincerely deluded in her occultism. And maybe even a British intelligence asset. I think that is possible. I've not seen it proven yet, but I would not be surprised given the discussion that I had with Dr. Spence about Crowley's work for British intelligence, where we know that a lot of his so-called mystery journeys and esoteric trips up into the Himalayas and whatnot, he was actually doing Secret Service work. And Mark Hackard translated an essay at Espionage History Archive a couple years ago. I don't remember the title of it, but it's something to do with Himalayas and esoteric crap. And he mentions spies. So people who were supposedly esotericists were going on these trips as covers. This has been done for a long time. Okay. This is, people freak out when they hear this and they think you're crazy. But really, when we talk about the New Age and we talk about the stuff that the Rockefellers have fostered, what are we talking about? We're talking about Far Eastern religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, practices of visualization, the ascended master Jesus. I'm going to list all the things that I can think of that come to mind. Elements of Wiccanism will tie into this. The idea that Lucifer is a good dude who's here to enlighten you. This is what Scottish Rite Masons will talk about all the time. The idea that man can become a god, apotheosis, which is different from what Jesus says, that he came to make us immortal. Right? The big question here is theosis through Jesus or apotheosis through New Age crap or transhumanism. The idea of like networking through creating new, what am I trying to say? Not networking. The idea is that you can create new civilizations or new ways of being, is what I'm trying to say, through planned communities. Every community is planned in a way, but I'm saying a lot of the stuff that you hear, like if you go out to Sedona or if you've been to any places where New Age is very popular, like when I was in Boulder when we were filming Hollywood Decoded. Boulder is terrible, man. It's like the New Age nightmare. It's like unbelievable. But you'll see these kinds of experiments with new ways of living. And this was talked about in the Stanford research document, Changing Images of Man and whatnot, where planned communities, which have long been test beds for mind control and all kinds of stuff like that. Esalen Institute, right? They were a big part of this. The idea that you can create a whole new way of living, which, theoretically, I guess it's possible that you could create a new way of living, but most of the time, these kinds of things are scams, is what I'm trying to say. And anything connected with the New Age like that. The idea that you can develop your own clairvoyant powers. The idea that you can tap into secret forces, parapsychology, guided meditation tours. What's that? There's one where you specifically try to regress to past lives and all this kind of crazy stuff. Let's see. What other things come to mind? I'm not sure that hypnosis is necessarily bad, but it's oftentimes connected with a lot of this kind of stuff. Practices of divination, the idea, the idea of nature worship in general, and this is actually a big part of what the United Nations has promoted for a long time. And by the way, it's not accidental that suddenly veganism is everywhere, and suddenly there's a giant push for veganism because it's directly connected. It's going to be directly connected to austerity, global green agenda, 2030, all this stuff. That is intimately tied to veganism. And the smart cities are already saying you're not going to have meat. You're going to get your rations. I've talked about this in previous videos. And Alvin Toffler said that the anarcho-vegans would be tied together to be experimental test beds for new ways of living. And that's what you're going to get in the smart cities. So all your new age crap and all your vegan crap and all that has nothing to do with saving animals. You think these people care about animals? They don't give a shit about animals. They mix the animals into spider monkeys. They do genetic modification. They don't care about animals. They don't care about you. Perennialism, tarot, that kind of stuff. I've talked about all that for a long time. Channeling, that you're going to channel spirits. Like that one guy that was trying to debate me, Alex, whatever his name was, Ciarchus. And he's like, do you don't think I channeled good spirits or whatever? And I was like, what are you talking about, man? I did not know what to expect in that interview, but he says I'm scared because I won't come on and debate Joe Atwell. I'm not scared. I just think it's ridiculous to have to debate, not Joe Atwell, I'm saying, but this guy, he's trying to debate me that he can channel spirits or his buddy can or whatever he was saying. I don't remember. But the New Age has really tried to encompass all this, and you might think, oh, the New Age isn't really popular anymore. We don't hear. No, it is. Trust me. Go to Boulder. I was there multiple times in the last 2 years. You will find that the New Age is still very popular. And sometimes astrology ties into this. Astrology is kind of, nobody really pays attention to astrology anymore. But when you go to Boulder, I'm trying to stay awake for this. I had a busy weekend. There's this New Age shops everywhere, man. It is like there's just every store, everything. It's just, I don't like it there. I really don't. It's very weird. If you have tobacco, people like get mad at you and they bitch at you and they look down at you if you smoke a cigarette. Meanwhile, there's like all these junkies laying around on the street. It's like, give me a break. Your whole city promotes junkies laying everywhere, and you're looking at me like I'm an eco violator because I have a cigarette. It's a cult, man. It really is a cult. All of it, look, here's the way to understand the world. It's all competing cults, and I think orthodoxy is the true one. That's the best way to put it. Everything else is a freaking cult, and I don't care how anti-cult you want to be. You're still some kind of a cult. I mean, even the anarchists are a freaking cult. And then Ken O'Keefe, the superstar anarchist, is up there touting all this vegan crap. So anyway, sometimes union stuff ties into this, right? So I think everybody has a general idea of what New Age crap is about. And we get this, as I said in part 1, from the promoters of theosophy, and this is people like Annie Besant, Alice Bailey, and then of course the old hag herself, Madame Blavatsky. And somebody, I'm sure eventually it's going to turn up because people are starting to figure this stuff out. Like, 10 years ago, I would have had no idea that Crowley was an MI5 asset. This has pretty much been established, at least to some degree, that he was now. So I would imagine that eventually people are going to establish that probably Blavatsky was too, in some degree. She was probably some kind of British asset. And her whole program of theosophy is promoted by all these big name people. And it's basically just a return to Gnosticism. That's the best way to put it. It's a repackaging. And who is going around repackaging Gnosticism? None other than Jordan Peterson. I just listened to him being interviewed by Russell Brand, which the interview itself is okay to listen to. I mean, it's a listenable interview. I was engaged the entire time. But then, yes, I hear finally a full presentation of Jordan Peterson talking about the Bible, and it's all Jungian psychobabble, and I'm like, give me a freaking break, dude, come on. But, this is what the big name people, Ken Wilber, if you've heard of that guy, Karen Armstrong, she promotes this generic all religions type crap. She's written these big promoted books. And I've been reading books for a long time, and I've read a lot of books, and I've been in publishing at different levels, different times. And my mom was an editor for a long time. And the people that are promoted to have the big top books, they're not that smart. This is something that has kind of amazed me over the years. But once you start to see through the facade of our society, it kind of makes sense. But like Elaine Pagels, she's not that smart. She's an idiot. But why does she have this top super promoted book? Well, she has that book because that's what she's supposed to do. They want her to promote her dumb book. And why? Well, because it's supposed to replace the patriarchal mean god with the new goddess idea, right? And so it's literal feminism. That's what she is all about, by the way, in her book and in her other books, promoting all the same crap. So, of course, the Rockefeller, CIA, New World Order, globalist establishment is going to promote her crap. I think you could even tie in Robert Anton Wilson, and I've read 2 of Wilson's books. I'm not ignorant of Robert Anton Wilson. I've read Cosmic Trigger and the other one, the Lucifer one. And it's the same kinds of ideas that, like, you can get away from all ideology. Ideology is bad itself. There's an inherent problem with having the idea that there's convictions, or that there's rights or wrongs, that there's truth or falsehood. Oh, that's all Western logic. You got to get away from that. And no, we don't want to get away from that. By the way, when you hear me, if people are ignorant of this, and I guess a lot of people are, when I say Eastern Orthodoxy, that's a very specific tradition of Christianity rooted in dogma. Okay, we don't believe in like mysticism where you don't have any objective teachings or dogma. No, we definitely do. So don't be confused by me talking about orthodoxy and the idea of like far Eastern religions. And so I've had some questions this week specifically about that. And I would say read Seraphim Rose's book, Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, which I also have a 2-hour lecture on, because that book is the Orthodox response to Hinduism in the New Age from a guy who became a very famous monastic. He will probably be the next Orthodox saint from America. Wrote a great book against evolution, about creation, Genesis, creation, early man. We will eventually cover that book when I finish it. It's very long. I've got a good bit of it done, but I want to have the whole 1,000 pages or whatever finished before I do the lecture on it. But he has a great response to the New Age, and he was somebody who was into, I think his PhD, pretty sure his PhD was Chinese philosophy. It's either Chinese philosophy or linguistics, one of the two. And he got really into, meditation and all that stuff. And then he became a Orthodox person and became a monk and is the St. Herman of Alaska Brotherhood and all that. That's very famous now because of Seraphim Rose. So, the Aquarian Gospel. This is one of these new agey things that has been going around for a long time. That's less popular. There's another one though, that weird big blue book. Oh, what is the name of that stupid thing? And it's supposed to be revelations from God. It's like God talking to you in a very personal new way, which just happens to sound like the voice of the New Age weirdo that wrote it. That one slips my mind, but there's tons of these, like the new revelations of God, right? God, the new gospel or something like this. There was a popular book like back in the like 98, 99 that was like Conversations with God, I think was what it was called. This is the same idea, and it's obviously not God. Okay. Course in Miracles. That's what I was trying to think of. That's one. Course in Miracles is another one of these big weirdo books that supposed to be teaching you how to have a true mystical experience. And here's the thing. See, what I want to stress, and we're going to continue with the cults. I'm not going to get off base here. We're going to continue with the New Age Rockefeller stuff. Is that we have a different approach to religion that doesn't set logic over against subjective experience. So Orthodoxy is very experiential. It's very existential. But we don't believe in the dialectic of the modern West that you have the personal piety set over against objective rationality. Like, those things aren't in tension. And the New Age is an attempt to steer a group of the public over into one falsehood, which is a half-truth of modernity lacking mystical experience. You see? Exactly. And then where's the other half? The left side of the human spectrum, the left side of the human brain. Where are they being steered into? New atheism, materialism, right? All the evangelists of atheism that we have to endure every single day, all over the TV and all over YouTube. So you have, if you're more left brain, you can be shuffled over into the new atheist category. If you're a right-wing creative person, let's shuffle you over here into the Esalen Institute giant New Age brainwashing factory. And guess what? They're both brainwashing factories. You're not smarter because you're amazing atheist. Amazing atheist is in just as unfortunate a position as Deepak Chopstick, or whatever his name is. Deepak Chopstick. That's pretty good. I'm going to use that one. If I ever meet him, I'm going to say Mr. Chopstick, and then he'll be offended. Let's see. I did want to mention a little bit on Esalen. Now, if you want to understand, excuse me, Esalen, just look at the Wikipedia page at who's involved in the Esalen Institute. That'll tell you everything right there. All of the top liberal globalists, all right, are part of Esalen. And Esalen was connected to the the hippie movement. I had some notes on this Esalen here. I'm trying to find my Esalen notes. Hippie movement and all that stuff was intimately connected to all these characters, part of Esalen Institute. And this was I've been not to the actual institute, but when I went to Hollywood 2 summers ago, when we went to Laurel Canyon, we drove up to Big Sur, and I saw the Esalen Institute, which is actually situated in like the most beautiful area of California, on that Big Sur coast there, with the bluest water. But let's see, 66,194. But Esalen, I thought I had a bunch of notes on Esalen in here. Where did it go? Well, I don't know. Anyway, really all you need to just look at the Wikipedia page, because it's kind of like it's like a New Age think tank, is I guess the best way to put it, where you have Huxley's, and I think Deepak Chopstick was part of Esalen too. He's been there. And if you watched that MK Ultra documentary, they had a good section too, linking Esalen Institute to the Vienna Circle. And that was a new connection to me. I did not know about that. However, it perfectly makes sense, though, that deconstructionists and Vienna Circle people would be connected to the Esalen Institute, because the postmodernist people really don't have too far to go to be New Agers, because the whole purpose of everything that we're seeing isn't just to break everything down, it's also to rebuild it, right? So it's not just to destroy everything, it's also then to remake things into the new order. That's the whole thing. I do want to touch on Mother Teresa as well, because I got some people angry because I tweeted that Mother Teresa was a phony maybe a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I don't remember what, but I was quoting her I think it's the 1986 Time magazine interview, and she says, my job is to just make Buddhists better Buddhists, Muslims better Muslims. I'm not here to convert people. Now, I will also give credit to Weirdo Tex Mars, who's kind of a goofball, but folks, this is Tex Mars. The Zionists, the Illuminati people, the Illuminati's gonna get us. I haven't done my Tex Mars in like 10 years, so it's a little rusty. Spinning in space. Friends, did you know the people at NASA are all a bunch of Illuminati? But Tex Mars is who brought to my attention many, many years ago. And I got this out just because it's funny here. This is the first book I ever read that was conspiracy. And I got this book in 1998, and it came out in 1996. And this is Tex Mars's book of cults and religions. And and the only reason I got it out is because I have to give Tex credit, because he was the first person to call out Mother Teresa being given all of these awards from top-ranking New Agers. Now, I'm sorry, but ain't no Christian gonna be getting awards from Luciferians. But I've looked this up too. He didn't make this up. This is all true. So there's this New Ager guy, John Roger, and it's one name, John Roger. Back in the 80s, who was this kind of popular New Age figure back then. I don't think anybody knows who he is now, but he had this cult thing, and he was part of International Integrity Awards, which was giving out New Age awards. And he gave it to dignities all over the world, and one of whom was Mother Teresa. And he was also connected to Lech Walesa, who probably, obviously, a CIA dude. And my stupid university had all these idiots come talk, by the way. BFS with Desmond Tutu. These are just globalists. And guess who else was his big partner, big buddy? Jonas Salk. So we're starting to see that the New Age gurus, they all run together. John Roger gives his award, which is a giant lead crystal pyramid that includes a check for $10,000. These celebrity-laden humanitarian awards go to individuals such as John Forsyth, Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, Terry Garr, Ellen Burstyn, Ralph Nader, and Mother Teresa. Oh, all the great liberals. They're so humanitarian. Oh, let's see. So here's a little bit more on this this New Age guy. Oh, and by the way, you'll also be interested to see the images of Mother Teresa praying in various Hindu and Buddhist temples, which are very well known. So another one of your New Age Vatican II saints, just like John Paul, who participated in all the same pagan rites. So John Roger started this New Age cult called the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, and some have called it the Cadillac of cults because it was at the top in the 80s. It was at the top of the New Age spectrum. Again, I don't think most people know what this is anymore. I don't know what happened to John Roger, but I guess we could look it up. John Roger was born Roger Hinkins, an English teacher at a high school in California. After a kidney stone operation, he underwent a freak accident leading to a sedative overdose. Hinkins was in a 9-day coma. When I woke up 9 days later, he said there was another being inside me that possessed me that I called John, and hence my name, John Roger. That's what this guy says. You can debate whether he's a con artist or really is possessed. Either way. So he was already known as a charismatic man who was a hero to his students. John Roger began to teach in the homes of friends around Southern California. And soon he founded his own made-up church, the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness. By the mid-70s, thousands of people had joined his newsletter and were subscribers to his audio tapes, where he chanted the names of God and claimed to be a minister of light from the Melchizedekian priesthood. That's just copy and paste things out of the Bible. His movement was incorporated into a church, and its ministers began to perform regular ministerial duties, such as baptisms and marriages. John Roger proclaimed to his followers that he was the positive energy of Christ, and that he was also the Holy Spirit. John Roger called himself Mystic Traveler. In 1974, his movement moved into a mansion in Los Angeles he dubbed the Purple Rose Ashram of the New Age. That's his actual acronym. Purple Rose Ashram of the New Age, Prana. And it is referred to as the Prana Theological Seminary now. The teachings of Prana included the dispelling of negative energies through the absorption of mystical traveler consciousness. So a bunch of gobbledygook. He set up centers in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Chicago, Paris, London. Eventually this turned into some giant 50,000 people crap. And he made friends with all the elite. And then he starts giving out awards to Stevie Wonder, Tom Bradley, Desmond Tutu, Jonas Salk, Luciferian, and Mother Teresa. Now, anybody with a basic knowledge of Christianity would not promote and accept this dude. They would rebuke him for this nonsense. And what did Mother Teresa didn't do that? I'm sure she was more than willing to accept her $10,000 check. So that's why Mother Teresa is so hallowed by the Vatican II establishment, is because she's the perfect image of the ecumenical saint, right? Don't have any specific dogmas, believe whatever you want, just be a good person. And that's not Christianity. You can have your own little religion where you invent that, but that's not Christianity. It's certainly not what Christians have taught since St. Ignatius, Justin Martyr, St. Athanasius, St. Cyril, St. John Damascus, St. Maximus Confessor, right? All of our whole tradition, all the people that put the Bible together, they did not teach that. But so don't be duped by these people lauded by the world. If the whole world is praising you, what did Jesus say in the Sermon on the Mount? If the whole world is praising you, something's wrong. Right? He says, if you follow me, the world will hate you, because you're not going to tell them what they want to hear. And people who tell the world what they want to hear are popular. The popular kids, right? I don't want to be a popular kid because the whole system of the world is a giant scam of idiots. We're not interested in being popular. If we were, we would teach Darwinism and New Age gobbledygook. We could be very popular. But anyway, I mean, creation, come on, that's like the most unpopular thing imaginable. Orthodox Christianity, there's like 7 million Orthodox Christians in America out of 330. Come on. I'm not here to be popular. I don't mind popularity if it comes, but hopefully not at the sacrificing of principles is the key. So, next, we got Elaine Pagels, we got Aquarian conspiracy here. I wanted to discuss a little more from Marilyn Ferguson. And Marilyn says that we need a whole new paradigm across all the spectrum of life. So she doesn't even stop at like what am I trying to say? She doesn't stop at just find a Zen center to go pray and do your yoga. By the way, if you don't think this has had an impact, every dumb girl does yoga. Why? Why are all you dumb girls doing yoga? Oh, to stretch and to show how limber I can be and to show the God forms in my body. Come on. That is evidence of this whole program being everywhere. The whole corporate sphere promotes yoga, and that's a big part of the whole New Age paradigm. And so if you think the New Age is dead, you need to look no further than every freaking girl doing yoga. Now, not every girl does yoga to invoke gods. I understand that. But the purpose of it being popularized in America was to get everybody into this New Age idea. And all this New Age stuff is intended to convince you that there's no such thing as truth and falsehood. So at different sections in the book, Marilyn Ferguson will list old paradigms in education, in healthcare, et cetera, that have to be shifted to the new Aquarian paradigm. And again, she wrote this in 1976, and you'll start to notice that her predictions of the paradigms have all changed. So let's look at paradigms that have changed in relationship, she lists, to power. So the old paradigms of power were an emphasis on a program, a platform, and a manifesto of specific goals. And she says nowadays, the New World Order, Aquarian paradigm of power, and she's talking about power across the board, corporate power, political power, whatever. The new emphasis is simply resistance to the old. Change. In the old paradigm, change came by authority, imposing it from the top. Nowadays, the new paradigm will be change from democratic consensus. The old paradigm, institutions were what gave us help and service. And in the new paradigm, it will be about individuals voluntarily choosing self-help because it will be inculcated. In other words, you'll start to see voluntarist associations. In other words, the anarcho model of getting these things, communal living, and this is going to tie into austerity because you won't have the services. The elite will, but you won't have them. The old paradigm was central power. The new paradigm is decentralized power. Yeah, right. I mean, you're going to think you have decentralized power, but you won't. it will be a decentralized power given to you. Remember, this book is still propaganda too. And of course, this image is the Georgia Guidestones. Let's never forget those, which state that the world needs to die. The old paradigm of power was for the purpose of taking care of others, and it was a win-lose orientation of enemy and good guy. And the new paradigm will be win-win, no enemies. Government was an institution that was monolithic. Government will now be a consensus of voluntary individuals that will be constantly in flux. Power will have to give rise to autonomy and individuality. Yeah, right. So here's your whole libertarian Aquarian. I should do a video. That'll be a title of like a video or something. The Aquarian Libertarian. And here it is in Maryland Turd Ferguson. Solely masculine. Oh, the old paradigm, because it believed in objective truths, was masculine. And now, guess what? Feminine. And why is that? Because feminine power politics is intuitive. It's non-linear. It's dynamic. It changes. It's not subject to the idea of objective truth and your fascism. Get your objective truth fascism away from me. So you see these social justice warriors, they're intended to be the leaders of the future. Jacques Attali says in his book, the social justice warriors are the vanguard of hyper-democracy and transhumanism. Remember that. Let's see. Some more of her paradigms of power that are going to change. Government has a disciplinary role. In the new paradigm, government will exist to foster growth, creativity, cooperation, transformation, and synergy. In another section, she talks about health. And healthcare is going to radically have to change in the new world order. And again, understand this is the paradigm of change for everything. The globalist plan is not, oh, they're just going to get rid of America. The Marxist commies are getting rid of America. Nope. It's a global plan, and it's all this stuff. So healthcare will move away from treating of symptoms into searching for patterns and causes. Okay, well, pattern recognition is involved in traditional healthcare. So anyway, and yes, traditional healthcare is a Rockefeller thing. I recognize that, but this is the new phase. Traditional healthcare allowed you to have a specialized doctor. You won't have that in the future. You'll have like bureaucrats from the state assigned to your health, or some AI program. I'm not kidding. Will tell you what you're entitled. That was the whole plan of Obamacare. There will be an emphasis on efficiency, on human subjective values. What does human subjective values have to do with diagnosing your health? This is preposterous. Pain and disease are seen as negative things. Pain and disease are information about conflict. What? That's what she says. So we're not going to be about objectively diagnosing something wrong. We're just going to be looking at how and why you feel bad about it, and how feeling bad about it and your illness might be necessary for you to have. Right? You might need to just die. The body is a dynamic, fluid organism. It has fields of energy. Yeah, okay, that might be true. The disease will be seen as what the heck? Wow. In the old paradigm, disease was seen as an entity. Well, yeah, could be. In the new paradigm, disease will be seen as a process. Like you're supposed to have these things, right? So you're not going to be healed. You're going to be integrated into the process of accepting that cancer is natural. Wow. I mean, that's what she's saying here. Let's see. Your doctor is an authority. Your doctor will become a life coach and a therapeutic partner. Wow. So they really want to take over healthcare and education. I mean, that was so crucial to globalism, and they have. Wow. And by the way, it's a different healthcare for the elite. This is the healthcare for you idiots, right? All of us, the plebes, the common filth, will be given this retard care, like you see in Idiocracy. But that's not what David Rockefeller's going to get. Well, I don't guess he's getting any health care now, but you know what I mean. Body and mind are seen dualistically. This is actually a good point she makes, that the Western idea that your mental state and the way that you view the world has nothing to do with your body. That's not true. So I would agree with her on that point, but I don't think she's actually interested in people getting better. I think she's interested in brainwashing people into the Aquarian libertarian conspiracy. The old paradigm put an emphasis on data, charts, tests, dates, information. The new paradigm will put an emphasis, a reliance on the patient's subjective attitudes and intuitions. Well, maybe. Anyway, so let's look at one more section. And this is a fairly long book, so I'm not going to read everything. Paradigm shifting that she talks about. But these are interesting because, you know, we don't usually go into this stuff at Jay's Analysis. We're not usually talking about healthcare and that kind of stuff. Education. This is an important one because in hour one, we were just talking about the importance of education in the New Age Rockefeller program. Here is Marilyn Ferguson. Again, she's not a conspiracy theorist. She's a propagandist. She's an evangelist for this. She says the old paradigm of classical education was conforming to a standard of objective truths. And now the new paradigm is about guesswork. It's about divergent thinking and creative process. Well, I mean, yeah, you could argue that the traditional paradigm might have excluded creative process, but the creative process is not in a dialectical tension with reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I already read you earlier, William James or Dewey or one of those guys was saying that the purpose of education will be to get rid of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Thinking will be nonlinear. It will be holistic. It will not be based on objective right, wrong, truth, falsehood. Yep. Labeling things as true, false, blah, blah, blah. Labels will only be used in a minor role, and they will be subordinated to the individual's educational career. Right. So you're going to have your track determined for you by the technocrats. You're not going to, it's not going to matter whether you know what modus ponens is. It's not going to matter that you know what the law of non-contradiction is, because you're going to be at a factory. You're going to be a janitor sweeping up the robot shit when the robots crap. When the robots crap out, you're going to be sweeping. You're going to be dumping the janitor pink stuff on the robot vomit, because you won't have a job because everything's done by robots. The old paradigm of, this is a great one. Yeah. This one really makes me mad. The old paradigm had a reliance on theoretical book knowledge and abstract reasoning. And now the new paradigm will be heavily complemented by experiment, personal subjective experience, in and outside the classroom, going on field trips, taking apprenticeships, and doing experimentations. Now, there's a way that might be a good thing if it was done in the right way, but she doesn't mean it in the right way. She means it to brainwash you. The old paradigm was determined by bureaucrats and education board, and the next paradigm will be entire community control over education. Oh yeah, see, your kids aren't your own. The community will determine the paradigm of learning, and that's why you saw Common Core. This is all Common Core stuff, man. This is literal common, like the community is going to determine what's true and false. That's scary stuff. In the new paradigm, the teacher is not an expert. The teacher does not have authority or any advanced knowledge. The teacher is a co-learner with the students. Yeah, right. So we saw there the paradigm of transformation in healthcare, paradigm of transformation there in education. Let's see if there's got another paradigm here of change. Let's see. Values and lifestyle. Well, this ought to be good. So the old paradigms of value, vocation, lifestyle was consumerism, planned obsolescence, advertising, and the creation of artificial needs through commercials. Well, yeah, that's true. But does that mean that we're going to get her solution as the only way out of this? Regulated consumption, conservation, recycling, that will all be the new paradigm. So, austerity. Now, the old paradigm of consumerism was a scam, right? And you might think that because of the problems of the old paradigm, that her somewhat reasonable idea is like, okay, well, there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of recycling something. But you see, recycling is not because David Rockefeller and Bill Gates care about the environment. They wouldn't be proponents of genetic modification. You wouldn't have Monsanto if these people cared about the environment. You wouldn't have vaccines full of dangerous chemicals that Jonas Salk, the father of inoculations, says will screw everybody up if they cared about the environment. So her solutions might, in a way, somewhat halfway sound good, right? Kind of like George Monbiot says there's problems in international corporate rulership. Oh, good point. Thank you, Monbiot. What's your answer? Oh, the UN. So you have a created problem, reaction, solution. Right? The solution is always the answer of your torturers. The torturers give you the problem, they cause it, the torturers come along and say, oh, we have a solution for you, sir. This is what Winston does to O'Brien. O'Brien does to Winston. So the old paradigm was that you conform and try to get a good job. The new paradigm will be jobs will be created to fit people. I don't know how she thinks that's going to happen. Of course, when the robots take over, there won't be any jobs anyway. But the old paradigm is top-down decision-making and hierarchical. The new paradigm will be worker participation, democratization, and shared goals and consensus. Again, that might sound good, but that means that when you're at your job and everybody else has a consensus of some bull crap that you know is wrong and don't want to go along with, that means you're going to lose the job when you don't go along with the consensus. Okay, so this has nothing to do with actually democratizing corporations. Yeah, right. Who do you think's behind Marilyn Ferguson? A bunch of damn corporations. That's who. The old paradigm was specialized tasks. You specialize in a field. You get a certain job description based on something specific, computer engineering, whatever. The new paradigm will be cross-fertilization and multiple job roles. Yeah, because you're going to have to get 20 different jobs in your life to make a living, because the West is deindustrialized by globalist design. And the other thing she says is that you become identified with your job and your profession. I'm Bob the engineer. And in the new paradigm, your individual identity will transcend your job description. Interesting, because the individual identity is precisely what we see with all this SJW consumerist crap. SJW trans stuff is just consumerism applied to gender and identity politics, and the absurdity and contradiction of the idea of garnering your identity from these secondary qualities like my hair or skin color or what's another stupid one? Well, your body parts, right? I identify as a male, and because I make the decision to say that I'm a male, I can put on a prosthetic penis, and I can call myself a male even though biologically and for 20 years I've been a woman. So she's actually talking about this new way of identity politics becoming hyper fetishized, where that's just an insane obsession that people have. And I know that, I mean, I'm not that old, and, you know, it was not this way even in the 90s. And yes, I know that we had been under many years of psychological warfare, social engineering, cultural toxic process. I know that very well. But, I mean, in 1998, nobody was a tranny. Okay, they put RuPaul up there to, I guess, warm everybody up to the idea. And there had been some tranny crap, you know, in Hollywood or whatever prior to that. But, I mean, every day. I mean, in 1998, I didn't think about trannies, ever. I don't think about trannies now. But the entire freaking media and movie establishment forces me to have to see and encounter the idea of trans crap every freaking day. How did I wake up in a dystopia? In 1998, I was a high school senior having fun, and now I live in a freaking dystopia that is the movie that I was watching in 1998. Is this a dream? Am I still in a bad trip? It's like, what is going on? How did we get from still somewhat normal, you know, guys and girls? You used to have to, you know, I sound like an old man or something. Like, I remember in my day, we would drive around town in our cars and try to meet girls and have normal male to female interactions, and we'd go to parties, and now it's like people are talking about putting prosthetic penises on and having their penises cut off, and I live in a dystopia now. What dimension is this? I was watching Twilight Zone the other night. I was like, this is Twilight Zone. Literally, I was thinking, if you made where we are now into a Twilight Zone, and if the people in the 50s watched where we are now, they would think it was a Twilight Zone. They would be like, what in the world happened to this our crazy descendants? How did we go wrong? Oh, man. Anyway, so I'm giving you the run through of the Aquarian conspiracy, personal and social transformation in the 1980s by Marilyn Ferguson. Business relationships were previously about competition, aggression, business is business, getting to the top. The future will be cooperation and human values, and no more winning. Really. She's talking about all the social justice warrior crap, man. Here's another person, just like that Tavistock thing in the 70s, saying that the 60s countercultural revolution was intended to take everybody into tranny dystopia. And that's where we are now. And she's saying this too. Here's another source. That just hit me. It just crystallized in my mind that here we have clear presentation, because the Aquarian period, the Aquarian conspiracy, is the whole 60s crap, right? This is the age of the dawning of Aquarius, or however that song goes. They're talking. It's all this. It's all this. The old order was about stability, security, your station in life. The new order will be about change and progression. Blah, blah, blah. Constant change, all change. What does that even mean? Change and to progress. What does it mean to progress? How do you know you're not degressing? The old order was about profit, was about assets, was about income and status. The new order will be about awards, achievements, enrichment, creativity, and fulfillment. In other words, we don't need to spread the wealth. You people need to get ready for austerity. You're not going to get jobs that allow you to make decent living. So here's your certificate of good merit. Like when you're in grade school and you participate in something, and they give everybody an award, like a little certificate of participation or whatever. The old order was about economic motives and material values. The new order will be about spirit and new age transcendence. Ooh. The old order was about being rational. The new order will be about acting on a hunch, on a feeling, and non-linear senses of pattern. So the old order was about technology. The new order will be about appropriate green technology, is what she's getting at. Man. In other words, that means you don't get a car. Okay, let's translate this into reality speak, out of her gobbledygook speak. That means you don't get to drive because you pollute the earth. And the major car companies are announcing that there will eventually not be cars. I could not believe this. It was like the guy from Ford or something. I don't know. Chris put it on Hoaxbusters. I can go find the article, but one of the major car dealers, or makers, was saying, yes, we're bracing for the reality that people will not be driving, down the road. I don't remember what the timeline was, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But no, you won't get cars. The AI Google cars will pick you up and take you to destinations. Uber is part of this. I'm not saying it's wrong to be an Uber driver. I'm not dissing you individually for doing that. I'm saying that the idea that Uber just sprung up out of nowhere and they just accidentally happened to be attached to things like the NSA and whatnot. That's just to the free market at work, right? No. That is part of conditioning you to get ready to not have cars. And I wish I had the article on hand, but anyway, you can find it. It's go to Hoaxbusters and scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the major motor companies saying to not have cars. I'm pretty sure Chris posted it. If not, I'll put it in the links below this subscribers talk. And so, look, this is not all theory. Okay, so a lot of the stuff I talk about, it's books, it's abstract, perhaps at times it's this philosophy, whatever. This is all hitting us every day on a personal level, and it has reached epic proportions of craziness. It is getting, as a conspiracy person who studied conspiracy theory stuff since I was 18 or 19. I just read you from the very first conspiracy book I read back in 1998. I can't believe how... when I read that book in 1998, about cults and the New Age and UN and all that stuff, I was like, okay, this is crazy. All this stuff's going on. How did I not know this is going on in the world? And I was just starting to read the Bible, and everything was I was starting to get a sense of how to maybe have a worldview that gives an explanation to the world. And these conspiracy books would talk about the New World Order, and they would talk about the UN and the movement to get rid of the religions and get rid of all this stuff. And I think for a long time, especially if anybody listened to Alex Jones during the 2000s, you had this sense, quite erroneously, you probably got into the ideas of some patriot type group, and I was into that kind of stuff when I was 21, 22. And you think, oh, the way this is all going to come is some giant UN takeover, and the UN troops are going to be on the street, and they're going to put us all in FEMA camps and all this bullshit. And the whole time, what you start to realize, and what John Adams and I have talked about many times in our discussions, what you start to realize is that the New World Order has been around for a long time, and it's not it doesn't come in through giant catastrophes, because it doesn't have to, because that method is not the best method for doing it. The best method for doing it is to slowly do it through pop culture, through education, through all of these means. And I can't believe that we live in a freaking tranny dystopia now. I mean, when I go out in my hometown, there was no trannies in my hometown. There was no transgender people in my little hometown 20 years ago, 1998. And that's, so 1998, when I first read this conspiracy book, I should do a video on that. Reflections on 20 years of analyzing conspiracy. And a lot of the conspiracy crap was wrong, but it was also a lot of it right. And I don't think any of the conspiracy people would have ever dreamed that the stuff that they would really do was this crazy. I mean, we're all looking for like UN crap, and we're looking for FEMA camps, in like 2005 or whatever. And the conspiracy is the public education system, the banks, the ecumenical movement in the religion, what else? All this New Age crap, and the corporations. That's the conspiracy. And that's what nobody in the 2000s, unless you're in some very small niche group, I will say Tex Mars did say this 20 years ago. He said that the big corporations would be at the forefront of pushing the New World Order. He did say that. I will give him credit for that. But, even he had all these stupid books about FEMA camps and all this nonsense. But, and end times crap. I don't know. I'm just reflecting with you, my subscribers, having to smoke a cigarette at the craziness. That 20-year retrospective on looking at conspiracy has really done nothing in my mind except vindicate all the stuff that I read in the Bible. And I'm not talking about end times crap. I'm saying the realities of good and evil, the realities of spiritual warfare stuff. I don't mean that in a stupid Pentecostal way. I just mean it in the generic way. That the only way to understand the diabolical inversion of this plan is not just David Rockefeller, but that there is actual spiritual evil. I mean, this plan is so diabolical that it has to be El Diablo himself. And that actually makes sense. I mean, that's kind of what the Bible says. I mean, the Tower of Babel is about one world order, one world religion, screwing up all the people groups, erasing all the ethnicities, right? Creating a giant blob. And here we have these top globalists in these books talking about, let's go back to cannibalism, let's go back to human sacrifice because it's natural. I mean, we live in the Bible times. We live in the Old Testament now. This is the Old Testament. The Old Testament. I'm joking, but I'm saying the world of the Old Testament period is the same world of the New Testament period. It's no different. And there are cults and there are elites that sacrifice humans, and that's the world that we live in. And you're not supposed to know that, except that now they want you to know that because they think that they have won. So anyway, I think the Aquarian conspiracy is another one of these phenomenal proofs, testaments to open admissions of globalism in the New World Order. And yes, I should have put it on the Globalist Books series a long time ago. But this has been on like the bottom of my bookshelf for, 10 years sitting there. It's been 10 years since I've looked at this book. Totally, you get so immersed in this stuff, you forget about the Aquarian conspiracy. And then you're like, oh yeah, she talks about Teilhard. She talks about LSD. She talks about the 60s revolution being what would pave the way for the global revolution. And that's really where we are. And yes, we will get to Jacques Attali. I'm a good ways into the book, but haven't finished it yet. So I want to finish that before we delve into it. But I did forget about, thank you to the listener that reminded me of Aquarian conspiracy, because it shows everything that we've been talking about here. And it shows, this is not just the plan of Netanyahu and the Likud. I mean, they don't really have anything to do directly with this stuff. There are Israeli interests. There are New Age groups like Baha'i that are located in more like Tel Aviv or something. And yeah, those are connected to the UN, absolutely. But you've got the whole world, right, lies in the grip of the evil one, as John says in his epistles. So that's what we're looking at here, and that's what we're up against. So remember, that's what Jesus told us, that the world would not like what we talk about because it goes against lies. And a lot of times people want to believe lies, and that's actually, that's the conversation in John 3 between Nicodemus and Jesus, is that Jesus says, unfortunately, many people choose to believe the lie because of the implications of moving towards the truth. So anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope that it was beneficial to remember this sort of obscure, kind of forgotten Aquarian conspiracy book, and reflect on the fact that it is yet another testament of an open globalist who had globalist support and funding to where we are today. God bless.